Hello everyone and welcome to the Gunpla Network. I'm the Spicer and today's review of the high-grade Cosmic Era Immortal Justice Gundam comes due courtesy of those fine folks over at Canadian Gundam. Canadian Gundam is your one-stop shop for all things Playmo and Gunpla here in North America. With flat rate shipping to the US and Canada, a private warehouse option, and a vast catalog that's restocked regularly, you're going to have just about anything you're looking for. So when you're checking that vast catalog and placing your next order, don't forget to use the promo code Gunpla Network to save yourself 10% off. Now, if you've seen some of our previous videos talking about Gundam Seed Freedom or the Immortal Justice itself, you know I'm a big fan of this design. I think this is, at least aesthetically speaking, one of the best looking Justice Gundams or Athrun adjacent mobile suits out there. I like the tone of red, I like the overall shape, some of the weapons I'm a little out on, the transformation's wonky, but I do like the backpack, and I like the overall silhouette. But how does that translate into plastic? Does it do a good job? Is it a little weird? Does the transformation kind of ruin it? And I'll kind of give you the overall sentiment of it's pretty good, but it's not great. Let me explain. So visually speaking, it's exactly what I want. It is the silhouette I like. As I said, this is just a design that sold me from moment one. It's the Justice, but it's a nicer red color more than like a pink purple. It's much deeper as well. I like that much more than kind of the light, almost pastel tones of some of the previous units. And overall, it's just a striking figure. Now, you don't have a ton of panel lining options, unfortunately, which, you know, kind of take it or leave it. I don't think it's that big of a deal. There's enough part separation in terms of plastic that it doesn't bother me all that much. But if you do like to detail things up, you're going to be left kind of wanting here. Now, outside of that, the actual sculpt is quite well done. The head is nice, the chest is nice. I quite like the little kind of blue-gray bits that are on the face plate and the chest. I think that's kind of a neat update to the Justice, kind of a carry-through from the original Justice, the Infinite Justice, and now the Immortal Justice. But it's unique in its own way. It doesn't feel like it's just building off of the same unit. The hips are obviously going to be a little weird because the big beam saber boomerang things. Because that's what they're actually in universe called. They're beam boomerangs, but none of the promotional art dictates that. It literally just looks like giant beam sabers. And yeah, down to the legs, everything is like, it's very well proportioned, I'll say that. The one thing I do kind of dislike from a aesthetic aspect is the weird little gray front part that comes out of the front skirts. Not only is that practically a pretty significant problem because it falls out anytime you're messing with it, at least for me, but it also just kind of looks a little weird. Like, you could have just had that been flat and I think it'd been fine, but it's not that big of a problem. It's more of a minor nitpick than anything. Now, in terms of its posability, it's actually pretty nice. Now, I will say the beam rifle and shield, obviously for this unit, are going to be less the main attraction, and while they are serviceable, they're like nothing special, right? This is kind of the exact same beam rifle that you get with the Rising Freedom, but it's on a close range melee unit, so of course you can use it, but most of the poses you're probably wanting to pull off with this guy are not going to. But it does do a pretty convincing air pose, and that's obviously where you're going to want this most of the time. And you can outstretch the arm, hold the beam rifle, and it's lightweight enough that it doesn't drag the arm down. I will say, however, due to the kind of bulbous shape in the forearm, it doesn't sit super flat, so you may have a few issues kind of getting it angled properly. But it's not going to be the end of the world. You can absolutely do it. You just kind of have to think about it a little bit more and pay some attention when you're moving it around. Now, I will say, one of the kind of minor complaints I have with this And it's mostly due to the design. I think they probably could have engineered this differently, but 50-50 engineering and design. The wrist is a separate piece that plugs into the forearm. And more often than not, when you're trying to pull the hand out to put something in it, if you decide to do it that way, that's how I usually do it, it's going to take the whole thing. Which, it's not that big of a deal. It's easy to put back in. It's just kind of a weird design choice. Now, if you do decide to use kind of the main selling points of this unit, the two big beam boomerang beam saber doohickeys on the waist skirt, and the two cool beam blades on the legs, which is very Justice-y, it looks pretty good. You can pull off some fairly nice static poses with both, where it looks pretty imposing, but you can also do dynamic poses that we'll see in a moment. The beam blades on all four things, the two beam boomerang sabers and the two beam legs, the effect parts all look great. I will say the biggest single individual complaint I have on this is the execution of the beam boomerang sabers, largely because you have to unplug and move the grip down, or the little like dark navy part on the actual hilt, if you will, and it just doesn't hold very well, and it looks kind of wonky. That could have been engineered better, I'm almost positive. But yeah, it doesn't really hinder it being used. It just isn't really my favorite form of this. And I would almost prefer like a regular beam saber, even though these effects are really cool looking. So take that as you will. It is kind of a design thing, but once again, kind of an engineering thing. I'm sure they could have done it differently. But regardless, outside of the actual application, the visual portion of it looks quite nice. Now, if you decide to go a more dynamic pose, which obviously this is a fairly dynamic mobile suit, you're probably at least going to want to toy with it if you don't leave it in a more dynamic pose for your actual display. So you can absolutely get kicks. The legs move all over the place as well. The skirt armor, well, the sides do pop off, is not too much of a hindrance. You're kind of looking about the same kind of range as the like Infinite Justice, so you have a similar type of mobility there, and kind of comes with the territory. But having beam legs is really cool. The effect is nice, but it is kind of hard to get a nice, convincing kicking pose. It just kind of is what it is. Now, you can absolutely kind of move the beam boomerang saber things. I really wish those had a cooler name, and I really wish they weren't boomerangs. Or even if they were, like, if the in-universe justification is they're giant beam boomerangs, have a boomerang mode. Like the Destiny Gundam has its beam boomerangs in the shoulders, and it has beam boomerang effect parts, but it doesn't have beam saber blades for those. That is interesting. Yeah, I guess that's just a weird personal thing I just realized that kind of bothers me a little bit. But regardless, they look fine. You can absolutely get good dynamic poses without the backpack getting in the way. The arms move all over the place. The legs move all over the place. So if you do want to put it on a stand on your display and have it in some kind of dynamic action, you can absolutely pull that effect off. Now, if you want to use the shield for like a punching motion, you can do it. As I've said many times before, the shields from this in the Rising Justice, or the Rising Freedom, do nothing for me. I think they're kind of stupid. They are what they are. I don't really like them. But if you do like them, you can pose around in its like shield mode, as well as it like being its own remote unit. And we'll see that in a moment. But it does have the big beam spike on the front. That's kind of cool. The wings are kind of hard to get out. I had to use some tweezers to get them out of there, but they do kind of come out. They have pretty much the only application of stickers on them as well. The white bits on the... Actually, no. The white bits on the tip of the wing are actually... yeah, those are actually plastic. So yeah, the only sticker on this is actually on the shield, now that I think about it. That's pretty crazy. I just realized that. I feel like there's another one I'm forgetting, but I can't remember what it is. Regardless, if you do want the shield on its own display piece, kind of like it's been thrown, as being remotely controlled or whatever, you can do that. It does have an attachment part, which is also used in the transformation, that you can plug into a base so it's like flying around. And while I do like this significantly better than it being on the mobile suit, this is something that will forever stay in a plastic bag for me. I have zero intention of posing it with this on my shelf. Now, if you do decide that you like the transformation for this, and you want to have it in its transform mode, you can do it. And I will say that out of all of the transformations, well, this is kind of parts for me, I actually kind of like it. Largely because it doesn't hinder the mobile suit mode itself. And while I think it does look kind of stupid, it's really easy. You take the little thing that covers the head apart, put it on the head, put the shield and the gun together, put them on the peg thing, put it in the 3mm hole in the bottom of the waist, adjust the wings, and you're done. Great. Awesome. Now, the Rising Freedom, I think, is a little bit more complex than this, but if you're going to phone in a transformation, at least the transformation in model kit form is easy. Now, if you do want to have it next to some Athrun suits like the Infinite Justice, its predecessor, you can do it, and it looks fine. You can definitely see here the difference in color I was talking about. This is a much redder, actually kind of a deep red versus kind of the purple pink that the Infinite Justice is. Neither looks bad. They both look great together. Proportionally, they're pretty similar, and you don't have any weird size disparities between the two. But you can absolutely tell the Infinite Justice is slimmed down and sleeker, and I actually kind of like that personally. But yeah, I mean, this fits with all your other Athrun suits, being the high-grade Universal Sentry line, even the real grade Justice, or even your Master grades. Now, obviously, scale's going to play a difference there, but it doesn't feel out of place from a design philosophy standpoint. It's pretty much on par with the rest of Athrun's suits. Now, if you decide to just have a Gundam Seed Freedom movie portion of your shelf, and you have the Rising Freedom, they look pretty good next together. The design philosophy is kind of there. You do have some similarities, you do have some differences, but neither looks out of place next to the other. I will say that the Immortal Justice is much more in line, I feel like, with the rest of Athrun's suits than the Rising Freedom is with Kira's. Largely just because there's some weird proportionality on the Rising Freedom, and if you guys want me to talk about that in some other video, maybe I will, but if you do want these two together, they look great. So if you have a Rising Freedom section on your shelf, great, you're going to be solid. Now, who is this for? If you're a Seed fan, if you're an Athrun fan, if you're a Red Rival Mobile Suit fan, if you're a Shin fan, if you're a Gundam Seed Freedom fan, this is for you. If you want a cool, dynamic high grade, this is for you. If you don't like Seed, you don't like the Seed designs, you don't like high grades, this is a pass for you. But I do say with 100% confidence that if you're any of the previous, the Seed fan, the high grade enjoyer, this is going to be something you're going to have fun with. But those are just my thoughts. If you've built this, let us know in the comments down below what you thought about it. If you haven't built this, but you're thinking about purchasing it, pop any questions you have down below and we'll do our best to answer them. Anyway, thanks for sticking with me, guys. I do truly appreciate it. And as always, I've been the Spicer here with the Gunpla Network. Do your best to stay safe and keep on building.